Alright, so when we work with Swift, it's pretty easy actually to jump in and just start coding. It's one of the things that I like about JavaScript as well. In JavaScript, maybe not exactly as easily, but it's still very easy to jump in and start programming with just a little bit of setup. That's not the case in all languages, though. A lot of languages require you to set up project files. You might have to get different boilerplates that help your code run or that give you sort of a framework for your code. Or you end up having to find some sort of online tool somewhere that is doing a lot of that for you already. The way that Apple has created Swift and the way that Apple has created Xcode is Xcode has a lot of that built in for you already. So you're not having to deal with different boilerplates or deal with different frameworks because a lot of it is already right inside of Xcode itself. So let's go ahead and launch Xcode. We have it here. You may or may not already have Xcode on your machine. If you don't, that's kind of the most painful part of actually starting with Swift, in my opinion. It's a very big IDE, or integrated developer environment. And it might take a while to download depending on who your internet service provider is. So if you don't have it, you might need to come back in a little while once you've actually downloaded it and installed it. So here is your launch screen. If you haven't done anything yet with it, then no recent projects. However, if you make a project and you save it, like to your desktop or something, and then you delete it, this will be blank again. So if you've deleted it, it's assuming that you don't want it anymore, and it won't show up in here anymore. And so, yeah, if it's gone from here too. The very first thing in Xcode that they show is not create a new project, it's get started with the playground. And that's what I was talking about. That's where you can very easily just get started coding and see what happens. So go ahead and click on that. When you first start out, it'll ask you for a name. This doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you want. My first playground, my first Swift program. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Now, the platform, that does matter if you actually want to export your project, because obviously you want it to match whatever you're developing for, whether that be iOS or OS X. If you're just playing to learn, then it doesn't matter. So for now, you can just leave iOS if you want, because it doesn't matter. So I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask me where I want to save it. Once again, doesn't matter, so I'm just going to leave it on my desktop. And there we have this, my first playground, or my first Swift program, .playground. We have this little pop-up here. Depending on how you have your machine set up and what security settings you have, you might need to authorize your computer to go into developer tools mode. If you don't, that could cause some difficulties when you're trying to program. So if I hit cancel, just to ignore it for right now, if I drag it off the screen. So, well, two issues actually. One, it's going to keep popping back up, and I'll explain why. But here in this window, we have a couple things going on. Right now, my font is very large, and yours is probably not this large, and that's okay. I'll mention that in a moment. So here we have our code. Here we have an active panel. This panel, is actively showing whatever is here. So if I make a change to this, it should automatically update over here, but it didn't, and the reason why is because I didn't authorize the developer tools. So if you don't authorize this, it won't update. I'll deal with that in a moment. Alright, so we also have a couple things here. We have a little eyeball, which is quick view, and we have the, come back, we have the value history, which if this were an integer and if I were actually making changes to it, so by integer, of course, I mean, a number, like, I don't know, say 5 or 10 or whatever, And then if, as I was programming, I made changes to it, where I was then adding 5 to it here, or subtracting 3 to it, or multiplying, or whatever, it doesn't matter, I could click on that and it would show a little graph of the changes that it made. And if you want, I mean, go ahead and give that a try. That's pretty easy to do, so I'm not going to show it to you right now, but you should give it a try if you want to check that out. Now, what we also have here is we have a little bit of base code. Obviously, we have our breadcrumbs up here that can show you sort of where you are. Right now, I don't have any selections up, so it's pretty simple. We have a comment here, so this is just 2 slashes and then whatever you want to say. As you would expect, this has no effect on the program itself. It's just for you, so you can leave yourself little notes. We have the UI kits. It's not really important to worry about right now, but just leave it there. It's important for everything to work fine for right now. And then at the very start here, we have just a variable, and we have a string, and we have hello playground. And so obviously our string. And of course, we've decided to call our string, essentially str. Of course, it didn't have to be this, and you could change the name of it, so string1. And, as usual, you should use camel case. Now, you do have to declare that this is a variable. In some languages you don't. In some you could just say string1 equals hello playground, but it's not a fan of that. So we have to have var in front to declare that we are making a variable. Also, we can't just make a variable and not define it. We have to give it some sort of value. It doesn't like that either. It doesn't know what type of variable it's supposed to be, whether it's a string or whether it's an integer or whether it's a boolean, true or false. So you have to give it the value. Oh, right, it decided to fix that for me. That was nice of it. So yeah, no big deal. Right now my font is rather large and yours is probably rather small. That's probably fine because I'm trying to show you in a video, so large font's important, and you're not making a video, so you probably don't need large fonts. As you would expect, you have preferences up here, so you can click on that. Yours will probably start in general, but you can move over to fonts and colors. I'm on presentation large. You're probably on default. That would make sense, right? But you have some different ones that you can look at and see what you prefer. And if you're going to print your code, you have this nice black and white mode right there as well, which can be useful too, so you're not having to worry about how are these characters going to look in black and white. So there's sort of a rough introduction into what you should be seeing when you start a playground. I would say go ahead and create a variable that has a number value in it in here. Make some changes to that, add some additional lines down here where you're adding +5 or -10 or whatever to the integer, and go ahead and see what that graph looks like.